Hey friend, how's it going? A story takes place in 2010 and involves poor Greg Fleniken. Have you guys heard of this story, this true crime story? Because it is fucking nuts. Like, I can't. Oh, the luck of this man. So, Greg Fleniken is a 55-year-old oil executive. And at the time, his job was in Beaumont, Texas. They're from Lafayette, Louisiana, him and his wife. And this man was a creature of habit. He would call his wife on the way to work every single morning, and when he got back from work, he would stay at the Elegante in Texas. A nice hotel, right? You wouldn't think anything sketchy would go on here. And he would get candy bars, pig out, watch TV, and chain smoke. And he would crank up the AC the second he would get into the room. It's Texas, it's hot, that's understandable. So he does this, so when he varies from his schedule, his wife's red flags start to go up, right? He doesn't call her, so she calls the hotel. And they can't get a hold of him. She's like, oh, so she calls the police. They come and they try to get, nobody answers the door, so they have to get in. And what they find is super, super strange. Poor Greg Fleniken, is dead as a doornail on the ground. There's no signs of forced entry, no sign of a struggle, there's no blood, there's no bruises, there was no theft, there was $1,000 in his wallet nobody had touched, and there was still a cigarette in his hand. This man went out with a smile on his face. And they're just like, I don't know what could have happened. All aside from a tiny abrasion on his cheek that they deemed a rug burn, and a tiny one on his scrotum. Okay? That's important. Put it in your pocket for later. So, the police decide to send this to a forensic pathologist to figure out what happened. What is going on? So, when the forensic pathologist looks at it, she's super confused. She's like, this man, if he was not beaten to death, something heavy was dropped on him. He was crushed to death. His insides are a wreck. And they're like, I don't. And the police were just like, there's no way. Even if something had happened on a job site and someone had brought him in, we checked the footage, there was nothing like that. And why would they think to put a cigarette in his mouth? So many things were not adding up. But they ultimately deemed it a death of natural causes. And his wife was like,
absolutely fucking not.
No. There's more going on here. I know it. So she hires a private investigator. And the private investigator asked her, he's like, well, like, did you notice anything strange about the room when you went in? And she said, yeah, the AC wasn't on, and that's not like him. He cranks the AC the second he goes in. So he decides he's going in to check out the room. Supposedly, he had tried to make some popcorn, he tripped a breaker, and it turned the electric off. So that solves the AC mystery, okay? But he decides he's going to go over this room with a fine-tooth comb. And what he finds is a teeny tiny hole in the wall that looked like it had been tried to be covered up. So then he goes over to the adjacent room and finds the same thing. And he says it looks like somebody tried to fix it with toothpaste. So he decides, all right, I want to see the footage of that night, and I want to know who stayed in this room. And he finds out that the two men that had this room that night was Lance Mueller and Tim Steinman. Okay? And they had a man over named Trent Pisano. And these men were doing electrical work locally somewhere. And they decide we're done. We're clocking out. Let's go get trashed. And that's exactly what they do. They're getting trashed. They're partying up in this hotel room. Mind you, let me backtrack a little bit. He calls these men up and they start singing like a canary. Old Tim Steinman, he's singing like I've held this in for a year now, and this is what happened. So he tells them they're getting trashed, and Lance tells Trent, hey, I'm pretty sloshed up, I'm pretty drunk, why don't you go down and get my handgun? That would be so much fun. And then while you're at it, go grab my other bottle of whiskey. Now, if that was you or I, would be like, absolutely not. I think it's time for me to go home, right? Or you to go home. Just a dumbass, okay? But Trent's like, hell yeah, man. That's the only thing that would make this party better. So he goes down and he grabs this man's handgun and a bottle of whiskey and comes back up to the hotel room.
You are a Todd.
Yes. And now,
Physical or mental?
Once up into the hotel room, Lance is having a G old time with this handgun. And he's pointing it at Tim, and he's pointing it over at Trent until it discharges. Oop. So they got their ear up to the wall, and they're like, listening. Did we hit anybody? Is anybody dying in there? They can't hear nothing, right? They listen just long enough to deem like, okay, it didn't hit nobody. We're cool. Let's go down to the bar and get more sloshed up. So that's what they do. They leave the hotel room. Trent decides, you know what? I think I'm going to head out. And honestly, good on you, Trent, because I think, aside from you deciding to grab a handgun for somebody that was super trashed, that's probably the smartest decision you'd made all night. So he leaves, and they didn't even realize that there was a dead body next to them until the next morning when they saw Greg being carried out in a gurney. And they're like, oh, hey, we're not going to say nothing about this, right? Like, we're just going to keep it between, yeah. So they keep it a secret for this long. But like I said, when he calls Tim up, Tim just tells him everything. And he agrees to go on a recording and to call Lance. And he's like, hey, I told him what was going on. You'd be smart if you did it too. And Lance is like, all right, yeah, I accidentally killed this man. Now, here's the thing. So when the private investigator goes in and he finds those bullet holes, he takes a laser to figure out where the bullet would have went to. He shot him in the balls. And then it went in and just like ping-ponged off of all his organs. And he ultimately died of a heart attack. You know what question I have, though? As a forensic pathologist and the police, right? How do you mistake a bullet hole in the balls for an abrasion? How do you do that? Like, you would think that there would be significant difference between the two. I don't know. Just let the job up to the professionals, I guess. You could choose to go. Unbeknownst to you and your cigarette and your candy bars, you're about to get shot in the balls. But they found his killer. And they figured out what happened, and Lance Mueller got sentenced to 10 years in jail in 2012. And the judge tells him, like, hey, man, if you would have just told somebody the next day that happened, you probably wouldn't even be getting... If you got jail time, it wouldn't have been a lot. But because of how you handled that, it's mishandling manslaughter, I think is what it was deemed. But yeah. The luck, right? That sucks. I can't even imagine. But that's the story of poor old Greg Fleniken. If you guys have any stories that you would like me to tell, feel free to DM me. I enjoy doing research on them myself. I enjoy finding them and researching them and putting them. But if you have any strange stories of your own that maybe nobody else has heard of yet, that would be pretty awesome. But you guys gotta let me know what you think.